Hi and welcome back to Time News. Today, the court in America officially ruled that Iran had been attempting to assassinate Donald Trump and was seriously trying to eliminate him before the elections took place. So, this is an official decision. You might say, what's the big deal? We've heard about this decision 100 times before, and nothing happened with the previous rulings. Why would anything happen with this one? But I'll tell you, this is actually very serious. Why? Because, keep in mind, the American president said that any attempt to assassinate Donald Trump would be considered an act of war by Iran against America. This time, we're talking about an official ruling. That means the American court has formally acknowledged that Iran was trying to assassinate Donald Trump. Will Joe Biden act and strike Iran in retaliation for the assassination attempt on Trump? That's one thing. The second thing is how Iran tried to assassinate Donald Trump, which is really important. The third thing is how Trump himself will respond to Iran if he comes into power, and why Iran's reaction to Israel has been delayed. What exactly happened with Hezbollah when the American presidential election was announced? Is Hezbollah specifically targeting certain goals during the announcement of the U.S. election results, or was it just a coincidence? There's a lot of news and highly important details you need to know regarding how Trump might deal with Iran specifically. American newspapers are writing extensively about it, especially since the assassination attempt was exposed, which is actually quite a thrilling story. When you find out how Iran was planning to kill Donald Trump, it's not something random at all. It's a very calculated matter with great precision, and a plan no one would have expected. How was Iran trying to assassinate Donald Trump, and how will Trump respond? But to uncover all this, I need to tell you the story from the beginning. Let's get straight to the point. What we have today might be something different for you, and it's likely the first time you're hearing about this attempted assassination of Donald Trump. The story is actually pretty intriguing. First, you need to know that there have been plenty of reports about Iran attempting to assassinate Trump. This talk started after the first assassination attempt on Trump, carried out by an ordinary American, a young American who shot at Trump in the middle of a campaign rally. Part of Trump's ear was injured in that attempt. Since then, there have been rumors that Iran, too, was trying to kill Trump, but we didn't know the details. Today, the court officially reveals how Iran was plotting to assassinate Trump. Here's the story. According to the New York Times and the Washington Post, there was a man named Farhad Shakiri. He's 51 years old, not too old, actually. He's of Afghan descent, not Iranian, and he arrived in the U.S. as a young child. Apparently, Farhad Shakiri didn't grow up under ideal circumstances. As he got older, he began breaking into apartments and committing armed robberies in New York City. The police arrested him, and he was sentenced to 14 years in prison. He didn't serve his time in just one prison, though. He was transferred between several facilities for reasons unknown. Farhad Shakiri served his time and was eventually deported from the U.S. afterward. He was caught in Sri Lanka with 90 grams of cocaine, which shows his criminal tendencies hadn't changed after prison. In the end, he settled in Iran. Now, here's what happened. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard approached Shakiri and asked, "Do you know anyone in America?" Shakiri replied, "Yes, I know people. I was in different prisons in New York, so I have a lot of contacts." The Revolutionary Guard officer asked him to find people willing to carry out a complex mission, the assassination of former U.S. President Donald Trump. Shakiri was shocked, but the officer told him this mission didn't end with Trump. They also wanted to assassinate a woman named Masih Alinejad, a prominent Iranian women's rights activist. Shaqiri agreed but warned that the two men he had in mind would demand a lot of money, suggesting $100,000 per target, especially for Ahmadinejad. The Revolutionary Guard officer didn't object. The two people Shaqiri suggested were Carlos Rivera and Jonathan Lowell. Shaqiri instructed Rivera and Lowell to monitor Trump and Ahmadinejad's movements closely and report back. Ahmadinejad's movements were easier to track, and she appeared to be an easier target. Shaqiri advised Lowell against killing her in her home. Instead, he told him to wait until she left her house and was in a secluded area. Killing her in a public place without cameras, he explained, would give him a better chance of escape. They agreed on $100,000 for Ahmadinejad's assassination. According to the New York Times, the plan to assassinate Donald Trump was no easy task. Neither Carlos Rivera nor Jonathan Lowell managed to carry out the assassination, even though they had information on his movements and followed the news. Despite being hardened criminals and killers, it seems they couldn't pull it off. Another key point is that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard wasn't directly implicated in the plan. So if the police arrested anyone, it would be Rivera and Lowell, who could only point to Shaqiri as the instigator. The chances of Shaqiri confessing are slim, especially since he's in Iran, making it difficult for him to communicate with the U.S. What's unusual, however, is that when the trial began, the FBI managed to contact Shaqiri in Iran. It's unclear how they got him to talk, but according to the article, Shaqiri confessed to the FBI in exchange for a lighter. He told them the whole story, saying that the orders were to kill Trump before he could take office. The planned timeframe for the assassination was October 2023, but ultimately, the plot failed, and the FBI was able to foil an Iranian-backed plan to hire a hitman to kill Trump. When Shaqiri returned to speak to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard officer, the officer told him not to worry, that Trump would lose the election anyway. It seemed they were convinced Trump would lose, and once he did, he would be unprotected and unpopular, making him an easier target. This shows the Revolutionary Guard wasn't prepared for Trump's potential return. It's clear that the failed assassination attempt was disastrous for Iran. Here's why. Right now, everyone is talking about how Trump wants to end wars worldwide, especially the war in Ukraine. However, Iran is notably excluded from this goal, indicating that Trump's stance toward Iran might be more severe. A newspaper called The Wall Street Journal reports that Trump is expected to handle Iran much like he did during his first term, and they explain why Iran might want him gone before he takes office. They say that in his first term, Trump withdrew from the nuclear deal that Obama had negotiated, which had eased sanctions on Iran in exchange for Iran limiting its uranium enrichment. Trump saw that Iran was funding militias abroad and decided to pull out, announcing, "The United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal." Trump's approach was what he called maximum pressure, increasing sanctions to levels never seen before. The Wall Street Journal suggests that if Trump returns, he will likely take a similar approach but in an even harsher way. Here's why. First, he sees Iran as a threat and now as a country that allegedly tried to kill him, so there's a personal vendetta. Second, he wants to prove his loyalty to Israel. And third, he aims to show he's serious about supporting the Gulf states, which he feels Biden hasn't adequately done. Trump is likely to be very firm with Iran, aiming to rebuild the Arab-Israeli, or Sunni, coalition against them. This could mean Trump will impose measures on Iran like nothing we've seen before. He's determined to stop Iran's nuclear ambitions entirely and curb its influence. Some argue that Trump's primary concern, however, is the U.S. economy, strengthening the dollar, reducing oil prices, and boosting economic growth. The Biden administration has managed to keep oil prices stable by allowing countries like Iran and Venezuela to export oil despite sanctions, which flooded the markets and helped control prices. Trump, however, would aim to reduce oil prices through increased domestic production. He is likely to encourage U.S. companies to drill more, even withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement if necessary, as he doesn't believe in climate change and sees it as a baseless theory. In essence, Trump wants American companies to produce oil, so that the U.S. reaps all the oil revenue. He's willing to allow drilling anywhere, Alaska or elsewhere, as long as it boosts oil production and strengthens the dollar. Trump intends to keep strict sanctions on Iran and impose even harsher penalties on Iran's oil sector to weaken its economy. The return of Trump would also mean the return of his familiar maximum pressure policy from his first term, a strategy aimed at dismantling Iran's nuclear program, undermining its support for proxies in the Middle East, and economically squeezing it through tough sanctions on oil, banking, and other sectors. Why would Trump do this? Setting aside the assassination theory, Trump's rationale for these sanctions is straightforward. He believes Iran has too much money, which allows it to support groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. By crippling Iran financially, he hopes to cut off this funding. Former U.S. envoy to Iran, Brian Hook, recently told CNN that Trump has no interest in changing Iran's regime. Rather, he aims to diplomatically isolate Iran and economically weaken it to prevent it from funding groups that destabilize the region. But then Sky News Arabia raised a question: will Trump actually be able to impose new sanctions? They pointed out that, in practice, Biden has maintained most of Trump's sanctions on Iran, though they're not as strictly enforced. Biden has allowed Iran to sell oil relatively freely, but if Trump returns, he'll likely reinforce sanctions. However, many sanctions are already in place, so it's not as though Trump will be creating new ones from scratch. Instead, he'd likely enforce existing sanctions more rigorously. Let's stick with the second question: how will Joe Biden deal with Iran? Keep in mind, Biden made a promise before the U.S. elections, a campaign promise for Kamala Harris, actually, to show that Biden isn't aligned with Trump and is committed to keeping him safe. When news emerged that Iran was trying to assassinate Trump, Biden came out and vowed that any official attempt on Trump's life would be seen as a declaration of war against America. Now look, the court has presented the matter officially. This isn't just some rumor, it's been verified in court that Iran tried to assassinate Trump. The story has been fully revealed, with the conspirators and killers openly confessing. So, will Joe Biden attack Iran? This aligns somewhat with Netanyahu's narrative. He wanted to strike Iran before Trump takes office in November or December. Would Biden join Netanyahu in making this decision to hit Iran? Interestingly, Iran hasn't retaliated against Israel since the announcement of the U.S. election results, possibly to avoid provoking any American sympathy for Trump. Iran seems aware that Trump might respond more aggressively than Biden. So, for now, Iran hasn't taken action, and after Trump's unexpected win, Iran appears to be reconsidering its position. Iranian statements following Trump's victory, including remarks from the Iranian president and his advisors, suggest Iran may now be stepping back and looking to avoid escalating conflicts, particularly in Lebanon. What I'm trying to say here is simple: if you're expecting Trump to launch a war against Iran, that's unlikely. Trump's approach has always been economic, aimed at killing Iran's economy and weakening the regime from within. Meanwhile, Biden, even after knowing about the assassination attempt, is unlikely to take military action, given that Trump is no longer in office. Biden's actions align more with Obama's stance, letting Iran export oil in exchange for reducing its uranium enrichment. So Biden is likely to stick with diplomacy rather than military measures. I hope this clarifies the issue, which isn't widely covered in the media here, even though it's incredibly important. Officially, a court has confirmed that Iran attempted to assassinate Trump, and Biden is likely to avoid a military response. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more insights into global news and developments. But before you go, I want to hear from you. With all these tensions and shifting strategies between the U.S. and Iran, how do you think the new administration will impact stability in the Middle East? How will Trump handle Iran after he returned to power? Share your thoughts in the comments below.